Hello, it's me. So, Candace Owens. She's on the back of a book written by some chap, alleging that Brigitte Macron is a he/she, alleging uh, she's getting embroiled in a lawsuit from the Macrons in order to prove her claims that Brigitte Macron was indeed a young lad at one point. They've gone to great lengths to intimidate, I suppose, hiring, really sort of power investigators and, power attorneys to fight their case in the US. So let's have a listen to what Candace says. And it should also be noted, before we listen to what Candace says, that the chap who wrote the book hasn't been taken to court. However, two journalists who investigated Macron after the book, I think, were taken to court, but the Macrons lost that case. And so now Candace is looking into it. Candace Owens is looking into it. I don't know. Candace. My mate Candace. But I've got a theory. But let's have a listen to what she has to say.
Years ago, someone saw a photo that they thought looked like it could be Jean-Michel Trogneau, right? Showing you the side by side here. They said, I'm watching a documentary, looking at the side profile, and look, it looks.
It does look like her. It's a nice pair of specs, actually. It does look like her. But then, is that just fueling the conspiracy theory, really? Because there's an old saying, isn't there? There's only like 10 face types in the world. And we've all seen those pictures of those total strangers that look like twins of all ages and sexes. You would genuinely think that's a brother and sister or a sister and a sister. They look so much alike, but they, born in different countries and everything. So how much stock can you put in these pictures, regardless of how much they look like Brigitte?
Like it could be him. Brigitte, as we know, rather mysteriously stated in 2018 interview that she spent a lot of time throughout her childhood in the United States, that she had fond memories of the United States, that she celebrated the moon landing with Americans. So that means, to be clear, her name is Brigitte Marie Trogneau. We should be able to find Brigitte Marie Trogneau having entered in the United States in the 60s multiple times. But we couldn't find Brigitte Marie. We also couldn't find Jean-Michel Trogneau.
So this is what we find with this case. Things don't add up. The documentation that should be available, with some digging, it has to be said, but documentation that should be available is kind of not available. Was that all pulled when she became France's first woman, first lady? Did the French Secret Service do that? Pull all the records so nobody can find anything? Well, that guy wrote a book, and he hasn't been taken to court.
And then yesterday, we got an explosive email. And we were at the beginning of this, guys, so bear with me as I take you through this. Of course, there is a potential that we are making some errors. This is an open investigation. If we make errors, we will correct them in the future. They said, Candace, I'm assuming you saw that a Jean-Marie Trogneau entered into the United States in the 1960s. And I'm going, no, I most certainly did not see that a Jean-Marie Trogneau entered into the United States in the 1960s. That's kind of like a very good time frame that we are looking for Jean-Michel Trogneau, and this is not a popular last name. And they tell me, yeah, it's on the Department of Justice website. You can see that a certain Jean-Marie Trogneau entered into the United States. And he's listed.
Is that where they hold those records? for what back then would have been a civilian?
As a crew member that is aboard a French cargo ship on August 27th,
Maybe he was the cabin boy.
1961. And we have no trace of Jean-Michel during those years, right? We don't know where Jean-Michel went. We don't really know where this First Lady went either when she was spending time in America. Now, you will recall that Jean-Michel Trogneux, when we were thinking about this Stanford thing, we're well, we know that he has a military file. We know that he was in Speyer, Germany, and he was a non-commissioned officer. And then the trail just sort of runs cold. It would have been a stretch for us to assume that he was aboard a ship that somehow made its way close to Stanford University, just in time for a psychological experiment that happened in 1971. That's a bit of a stretch. But it is certainly not a stretch that whoever this Jean-Marie Trogneux character is, okay, we can potentially put him exactly near Stanford University, beginning at the year of 1971. Do you want to know why we can do that? Because, well, as you just saw, he's listed as the crew of the MS Michigan. And in 1971, the MS Michigan was doing routes specifically from Germany to Oakland, California. A couple of days ago, someone saw a photo.
So the Oakland, California connection is totally lost on me. However, what's not lost on me is the fact that there is something here. There's an old saying that everyone will be familiar with: there's no smoke without fire. And so it goes. But I've got a theory. Tinfoil hat time. Yep, it's that time again. So anyway, the theory in short is this. What if, with all this censorship that's kicking off here in the UK and the attempts currently being foiled by Trump at censorship in the US are linked? What if there's a concerted effort by the dark forces to introduce internet censorship? What if this case, because Candace Owens has got a huge following, it's 5 million subscribers, and that's a big whack of people to be, broadcast into. What if they're taking her to court? And what if they're going to make a big brouhaha, as we say here in the UK, a big fuss about this case, and they're going to use this case to enforce censorship? The Macrons will say, look what she's doing. She's dragging our name through the dirt online. There are 5 million of these people who are listening to her. They hang on her every word. This is unacceptable. It can't go on. We're the Prime Minister of France and the First Lady. But I hear you counter. Well, it's a court case. How on earth can they be assured of winning? Well, under normal circumstances, they couldn't. But as I've said before, I did say tinfoil hat time. What if the case is rigged or will be rigged in order to facilitate censorship? Do I have any proof of this? Of course not. Don't be stupid. I've got no proof at all. This is all speculation. But what if? Because as I've also mentioned before, the security services and the intelligence services just do what they do. And this is the kind of thing that they do. Time will tell, I suppose. But until that time, please let me know what you think in the comments below. Do like and subscribe. And until next time, this is me signing off. Do look after yourselves.